Hello, welcome on this Wednesday, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We are going to have a little pre Halloween fun today, and this whole thing is themed for the holiday. So, real life GRC horror stories. Ooh, Tanya, are you afraid?
I am so scared.
So scared. Some of this stuff is scary, quite honestly.
It honestly is.
But it'll be fun to chat with about this today. Thank you so
Yes.
much, Tanya, for taking the time to
Of course.
join me today to share some real life horror stories. Ooh. Okay, I think we're just going to jump into this because we don't want to get too spooky scared that we just run away and not do it at all, right?
Exactly.
Awesome. We definitely welcome your questions. Thank you so much, everyone, for taking the time to join. So please put your questions in the Q&A box, and if they make sense in the tone of the conversation, we will definitely pick them up there. So thank you so much, everyone, for attending. Thank you, Tanya, for being with me today, and let's just jump into the spookiness.
All right.
Ooh. So today we are going to talk about real horror stories. Now, obviously, we're going to keep things confidential. We're going to protect those. We don't want to, you know, say anything we shouldn't, and we're certainly not pointing fingers at anybody. But the reality is, this stuff is real. We see it and live it every day. Isn't that true, Tanya?
That is absolutely the truth.
Yeah, sometimes it's firsthand, people we're actually working with, sometimes it's secondhand, things they tell us, and then obviously we can all find those examples in the news. So, these are not myths. These are real stories. They're rooted in real things that we see every day, that we deal with every day. And because it's the month of October, we thought we would have fun and turn it a little spooky because the reality is it is very scary, some of the things that we see. And the fact that there's not more breaches and more activities that the bad actors are able to get away with is some days shocking, honestly, with some of the things that we see and hear. You agree?
Yep. It is just, I think, a lot of luck that people are operating off of in this spooky world when it comes down to it. So, yes, excited to walk through these with you.
Yeah, no kidding. That sadly, I think you might be right.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on to your favorite blanket or whatever it takes to not be too scared. So the first story, and again, these are all based on kind of real things and real companies that we've worked with or talked to or somehow connected with. And so in a lot of these cases, it's not just one. It's like a theme. It's many. And so this one right here. So here's the horror. Oh, I don't want to actually do this GRC stuff. That looks like a lot of work. That looks complicated. That looks like that might take too much time. Or one of my personal favors, it's just administrative work. It doesn't actually mean anything. There's the horrors. Great. So, oh, look at this. Tool salesperson just told me I can go buy this thing. It doesn't cost that much. Push the button, see a big green thing on the screen, and woohoo, I am good to go and everything is great. So that is the horror. And so definitely going after the easy button, those quick wins. I am a tech person, so I love technology. Tanya can tell you that. I'm a total nerd when it comes to technology, and automation is great. What we can automate, we should automate absolutely. But the reality is, we have to be realistic about what can be automated and what can't be. So, Tanya, what are your thoughts on this horror?
Yes, this one is pretty spooky. I mean, I think, yeah, the inclination or desire to have the easy button to, if you will, have a body double out there doing your work for you,
Love it.
collecting, your sort of Frankenstein out there. But, you got to monitor those. You got to set intentions and plans, and, you really got to think through what that looks like before you can really let it run on its own.
Yep.
So yeah,
The
that's the main thing
Frankenstein.
that I think of here is really just setting a plan, thinking through what it's going to look like and keeping an eye on it. Don't just let it run loose and then check on it in 6 months and oh, it didn't do anything or it did bad things. Who knows?
Yeah, I love the Frankenstein. Good job on the Halloween tie-in. That's cute. But it does. It ends up. And how many times have we met with the company maybe for the first time and they pull up their dashboard from something they bought thinking, this is what where they were told this would fix it. And then what should be green is red. And then you start asking them like, "Hey, what's with the red?" Huh? What? Wait,
Right.
what? So what does that mean? Well, why is it red? I don't know because it's just red. Or then we hear, well, it's red because it's not really set up right. Well, we're not really using that part. Oh, okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So
Don't
then,
worry about that.
yeah,
It's fine. It doesn't matter.
it's
It should
fine.
matter.
It should.
Yeah.
So there's your Frankenstein reference right there. And the reality is, it's exactly right. Buy the tools that make sense, but have a plan for how they're going to be implemented and then be realistic about what can be automated and what can't be automated. I have a question for you, Tanya. You ready?
Mm.
Be afraid. I can automate 100% of this thing, right?
Oh,
I
if only.
If only. Wouldn't that be
If
nice?
only.
Yes. Wouldn't it
That
be
that
great?
would
I
be
could
nice. That's
I could
never
automate
gonna
a
be the case,
hundred
though.
percent of my gym routine, 100% of my eating
Exactly.
right, 100% of
Yeah.
shopping. Boy, that'd be
Hmm.
great. That's
Yeah.
just not realistic. It's not common sense. Like there still needs
No.
to be that oversight. And then especially if there wasn't a plan on the automation and how we were really going to set that up and how it was realistically going to fit in the organization, then there's where the horror comes out. But
Exactly.
let's flip the script because we talked about the big red. You pull up the dashboard. What does that mean? I don't know. Why is it
Sure.
red? That's one problem. But what's wrong with the big green button? But see, it's green. What's wrong with that?
That is a big old false sense of confidence right there.
Could be.
So if you're about to go into audit, or I mean, audit aside,
Yeah.
just having that sense of confidence, thinking that you're doing everything you need to do, that you're secure, that your clients are well protected, that is not helping anyone to have
Yeah.
that misconfigured and giving you that sense.
Quite to the contrary, that false sense of security, we see it with companies, like if they pass an audit, but they don't do it really with what I would call integrity, it actually bakes in the false sense of security. So then they don't want to provide additional funding. They don't want to provide additional resources. They don't really see the severity of the situation because
Hmm.
the wrong bar has kind of been set. But I think that's a different horror story we're going to talk about later.
Honestly, yeah, that's someone checking on you, being like, "Oh, you're fine, you're fine." The monsters are coming
Oh,
for you. They're knocking at the door.
oh, that's great. And a real story that we all know, the Equifax breach. Here's a perfect example. This is something that you can go read about, so it's public, obviously. But it wasn't a tooling problem. That was the breakdown. It was a process problem, a people problem. That was the breakdown as well that led to this. Ultimately, governance. It's funny, the G is the stepchild in GRC. People will talk about C. It should be CRG instead of GRC because people talk about the C. Everybody's fixated on the C, compliance, passing audits, all of that. They kind of talk about the R, but the R really is what we do. And then the G makes sure that everything works together, the governance, with really what we should be doing. So it is GRC, which is the correct order, but the world functions like it's CRG or maybe just C and forget the R and G. We don't even need
Sure.
those, just C.
Yeah.
That could have been a whole horror story right there in and of itself.
Seriously.
Anything else on this one?
No, I mean, I think this is a huge example. I feel like this impacted almost everyone when this happened. So just
Yes.
knowing that something so widespread, so far-reaching was just caused by just governance failure, just
Oh,
process failure is, I mean, I think really enlightening and just really just points to the importance of these processes.
yeah, you bring up a really good point, especially being practitioners in the space. It's so easy to get fixated on this control or this risk or this activity when the reality is what you just said should cause us all to kind of pick up our heads and look
Hmm.
around because what seemed like Oh, yeah, so we missed a patch. Meh. Is that really that big a deal? Come on. We still passed our audit, but look what happened. Look at the impact to people. Look at the impact to families, people's lives. Yes, that's exactly right. And we must never forget that what we do is so critically important because this any moment can be the outflow. And it's not that we live our lives in fear and except for Halloween and being cheeky. But it's not that we sit around and live in fear from the bad actor, but it is that we take very seriously the stewardship that's in front of us. So that was a really good point. Thank you for that level set.
Course.
Okay, can you handle another one? You gonna make it?
I don't know. I don't know.
Okay,
We'll
it's
see.
kind of scary.
Oh, it is a little scary.
Okay, the ghost employee. So this is the myriad of many security and or IT people that get tasked with, oh, sure, you're not that busy. You can just do this too, right? You can just take care of SOC 2 over the weekend, right? Just get us compliant. Again, emphasis on the C. Don't, that's all it's for. It's just for that. So there's the horror of that. Is this a real thing, Tanya, that you see?
Absolutely, unfortunately.
Too much.
And we see it a lot. We see it a lot. And, when folks are already overburdened, they have so much that they're
Yep.
working on, and then they get that sort of messaging from the top where just fit this in, as like a little side task. That's really kind of conveying to them the importance of it.
Yeah, that's good.
So just hearing that does not make you think that it's important. Why would you be inclined to, spend a whole bunch of extra time, assign resources, all that stuff, just to do this little quote unquote side task?
Right.
So yeah, there's a lot of importance on how this sort of stuff gets communicated down, I
Yeah.
would say.
There's huge importance. It's part of SOC 2. It's part of other frameworks, the tone at the top, which is
Mhm.
exactly what you're talking about. And if the tone at the top, and so people look at this stuff and they're like, oh, tone at the top. Okay, how do I pass that in an audit? It's so much bigger than that. Like that's not even the thing. Just have the right tone at the top and your audit will be fine in that, particular case. But you're so right. If the tone at the top is, "Oh, just pass," or "It's so unimportant to me that I'm just gonna tell you to do it in your extra time, and I don't see the value of the skill set and the commitment that needs to be there," then yeah, the tone that's been set is it doesn't really matter. And so, you know what? I don't want to do it anyway, so I'm just going to get through it as fast as I possibly can because they don't care anyway, or they don't see the value of it. So yeah, you bring up a really good point. Tone at the top is so critically important in this. So what else contributes to like really making this happen?
Yeah, I mean, I think having the right amount of time allocated, just understanding the risk involved with failing or, ignoring this sort of stuff. It's a reputational risk. It's a
Yeah.
risk, to your clients, to your employees as well. Because, if I'm just being told, hey, I know you don't have time, but here's extra stuff that you have to do, it doesn't really matter. I'm not going to feel great about doing that work.
Yeah,
Like
that's true.
my morale as an employee is not going to be great either.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's just really important to not cut corners, as tempting as it may be, and just understand the big picture of all of this and how it does, connect to all different sorts of facets of the business. Um, and just kind of see that full picture and communicate that down. What would you say about this one?
Yeah, no, exactly. While you were talking, I was thinking that we always talk about people, process, and technology. It's all three. So to be successful at really mitigating the risk of the organization in this space, in any space, but in this space, it's people, process, and technology. Security and IT people obviously got the technology part down. We work with a lot of super smart people. They got that piece down. The
Mhm.
people in the process is the problem. And how many hardcore tech, IT, and security people you know that just wake up in the morning and go, "Oh, I cannot wait to define a process today,
Yeah.
and then to write it all down. Whoo, it's gonna be exciting." It just doesn't work that way, so they definitely lean toward the technology, and then that's where, even from the previous one, that's where the horror kinda starts to take root. It's like, watching the TV in the night on the little snowy, which you probably don't even know what I'm talking about, don't
I
you?
do.
The little snowy, and then you've invited the poltergeist in. Like, this is
Right,
how this
right.
happens,
It's
right?
a
You did know
slippery
the
slope.
reference. I'm impressed. But that's exactly right. This is how this happens is, okay, the tone at the top is wrong, and then I don't have time to do this, and nobody's going to really care because
Mhm.
that tone has been set in a lot of cases, unfortunately. Sometimes on purpose, more often I feel like out of ignorance, like they just don't know what they don't know, honestly.
Exactly.
And that's where, coaching and education really is super important in this space. But then you on the other side, then you take people who are like, "Oh gosh, I don't have time. I don't wanna have time, and I don't even like the other aspects of this. So I'll just buy another tool and hope it all works out okay." And then here comes, the smooth talking poltergeist. "Hey, look at this. This will take care of what you need." And then there you go. That's right. That's how it happens. Like, you see how it happens.
Exactly.
Right,
Exactly.
but the reality is, it doesn't have to be a full-time, based on the scale and the scope of the program and the company, it doesn't have to be a full-time body. Hey, there you go. There's my Halloween reference right there. Full-time body dedicated to this, but the reality is there needs to be full-time function dedicated to it. So whether that's, kind of a group of people or however, half a person, however that would flesh out in an organization. But then, Tanya, let's go forward on the spectrum and let's think about the publicly traded large Fortune X whatever companies that we work with. Do they have large, robust teams with clear lines of ownership for all this stuff? Often not. It's crazy. Often it's like one person's job, and you're like, that's a lot of work for one person to do. And so even fast forward, out of smaller companies into ones that you would expect more, sadly, again, it just becomes very much a resource issue. So
Absolutely agreed.
yeah, and then I like the last bullet there on the far right there, maintain executive visibility year round.
Hmm.
Again, that takes time, that takes commitment, that takes resources to make that happen. It probably takes appropriate tooling that's set up properly so that we know what we're actually monitoring and then we're going to report, but really maintaining that visibility year round, because this ties exactly back to what you said, Tanya, set the tone at the top. And so a way you set the tone at the top is continually putting this in front of them so that they can see the value. They see this as an ongoing thing. So really super important. But I don't really have a good answer if there's not the appropriate resources, other than, obviously they can work with a third party like us, but
Right.
I don't really have a good answer if the company is, not committed to putting those resources. And I think that's why
Exactly.
we see the horror state of things out there,
Hmm.
unfortunately.
And then they
Uh,
experience the horror of it if they go through audit. So,
yes. And then even if they go through audit, they see the horror of it in their customer inquiring on how they run their
hmm,
program, even beyond audit. And then, of
exactly.
course, unfortunately, if the ultimate, bad things happen. So here's again, a public breach that we all, I think, have probably heard about. Very large organization. They had monitoring in place. It was flagged. But guess what? Roles and responsibility unclear, gaps, nobody picked it up. You've heard me say this many times. If two people own it, how many people own it?
0.
Zero. If there's not clear ownership, then nobody owns this thing. There's a stat I remember in New York City or something they did of like somebody hurting on the side of the road. And the conclusion was the more people that are around, the less likely someone would be to actually do something, because they just assume everybody else is going to do something. But the less people that were around, then people were more willing to jump in and to help. And I think that's very relevant for this, that if we don't have clear roles and responsibility, but there's one of those things that especially tech people are like rolling their eyes like, oh my God, roles and responsibilities, you're killing me. What does that even mean? But it's so critically important, and to write it down and to socialize it so that everyone clearly understands. How many times do we do tabletop exercises and we say, well, who's responsible for that?
Oh,
uh,
Oh,
uh,
what?
Bobby. And then we did one not that long ago, and they were like, no, actually, that changed on Friday. Like, it's not that person anymore. We're like, oh, here we go. This is
Yep,
why that's so important, because you don't want to be doing this in the middle of obviously
exactly.
something bad happening. So,
We
yes, go ahead.
do have a couple questions.
Oh, I
Some
love
great
it. Thank you.
questions. So our first question is, what's the best way to make the case for a dedicated GRC owner or team?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. You want to take that one first?
Sure. I mean, I think it is just kind of coming back to what we were saying earlier is like really getting a full picture of the risk involved of not having that. So knowing that it's not just an exercise, that it's not just checking the box, that there are all of these different connections to reputational, operational, client, partner risk. So just kind of understanding how it relates to everything and the true importance of it all. What would you
Yeah.
add to that?
Oh, I totally agree. You're reading my mind. Risk is the main thing. Like you have to consistently speak the language of risk, especially with non-tech people that don't understand, yeah, control. I have no idea what that means. Like you have to help them understand. And that's really important. The other things I would add is you have to be like consistent and patient. So this is the people change management of what we do. And let's face it, on a scale of 1 to 10, how easy is it to get people to change? Negative 4 billion. I mean, seriously, it's it's hard, right? People are we're all naturally averse to change, and then now you want me to come in and do something different. Oh, and spend money on top of it? Like, oh, are you crazy person? And so I think there has to be a measure of consistency that you're not being naggy and obnoxious, but definitely consistent so they see the theme and it's not just going to go away because you ignore it. I worked for CIO once and he literally I would follow up and say, "Hey, did you get my question about whatever?" And he said to me, "Yeah, I know that if I just ignore you, you'll figure out another solution. I won't have to deal with it." I'm like, "Are you kidding me right now? Seriously?" But the, but there it is. That is definitely like you got to think about like people who are running companies, they're getting a lot of things pounded at them in all sorts of different directions from all sides of the house. And then here, hey, I need this thing. Well, you and 40 other people need this thing. And so you just have to be consistent in that it's here, it's not going away. If you ignore me,
Mhm.
it's still here. And then that goes back exactly to what you said, Tanya, that it is risk. Like that's the language that we talk about. They don't care about controls, they don't care about technology, pen test, blah, 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 all this tech speak. They don't care about that stuff. Say it in a way that they can understand it. Like this is the risk. This is what this is going to do. Tie it back to revenue, tie it back to customer satisfaction, tie it back to business objectives. So here's the funny, this will make everybody shudder out there. There's this thing called a cybersecurity strategy. It's a document that every company should have written down on paper with words. And it should be my near term, like my next 12 months, what's my strategy? A longer term, maybe 2 years, and then a longer term, like 5 years. Tanya, how many times do you see a documented cybersecurity strategy? That's
You
that's
know, I don't know if I've seen one in recent memory at least.
yeah. We hardly ever see them. They're not part of audits typically.
Yeah.
So guess what? Nobody thinks it's important. Not part of the audit. Again, the GRC is very much backwards, or the G and the R are like ghosts. They're just not there.
Ooh.
Yeah, ooh, spooky. And so a cybersecurity strategy is a very real mechanism because the business has a strategy with objectives it wants to meet, and then the cyber group has a strategy that then aligns to support that. So, for example, if the business wants to break into banking, for example, just make that obvious. Okay, well, then compliance is going to become really super important very quickly. So, part of the cyber strategy, which does include compliance, it's not entirely compliance, but it includes compliance. It would be, hey, then we need to be really serious about this because this is what it looks like to break into banking. And so there's where those align. But again, strategy documents are not included as part of audits, and so therefore, sadly, we rarely see them. And back to the question, which was, how do you help them to understand it? Well, the reason I bring that up is because that's another mechanism of building an appropriate cyber program that would include a strategy that aligns to the business. So that sets the tone with the leadership of the organization that these things are important and this is why they're important. And it's not just the tech stack, it's the people in the process beyond that, which then helps to open up funding and budget. That's
Mhm.
just the reality. I took the CCISO exam last year or something, and it was laughable to me how much they made the point that the CISO's role is to follow the money in the organization, because you have to petition with every other group across the organization how to get that funding that you need. And again, working with the top of the house, speaking in a risk language, helping them to understand the value and the importance and how it supports the business objectives is where it starts. And then on the bottom, continually reinforcing that with appropriate dashboarding, appropriate metrics, helping them to understand the risk registers. That helps to to bring it all together as well. Anything else on this? Was there another question or anything else on that
There's
question?
a couple other questions, but I think they'll do well in some upcoming
Later.
sections. So I think let's save them
Okay.
for now. But really good questions.
Okay, so you're ready to move on to some more
I
horror?
think so. I think
Can
so.
Here we
Feeling
go.
brave.
Okay, here we go. I'm not going to breathe on this one. I'm going to laugh on this one. So, the horror is third parties, vendors. I thought I could trust them. I assumed I could trust them. How many times have I heard, well, we use fill in the blank here, Microsoft,
All
Amazon,
the time.
whatever big names.
Yeah.
So we're fine. But are you though? But are you
What
though?
really are you?
Really?
Yeah.
No disrespect to those companies. The
No.
reality is this is massive stuff to stay on top of. And then let me ask you this, Tanya, who's responsible for the risk of a third party?
You are.
Yeah,
Of your third parties, yes.
the company that engaged them. Yes.
Exactly.
Policies should include how we work with third parties and what the boundaries are, what they do, what we do. Very important. And then we've spent of late a lot of time on the whole concept of shared responsibility. That concept has been around for a while. It's There's the kook section in the SOC 2 report. I mean, there's different mechanisms for it, but with CMMC, it's even become more of a thing because they've made it
Mhm.
much more formalized and structured in you need to clearly understand where your vendor ends and then where you begin and what you're responsible for. But what's really the horror of this?
I mean, the horror is just, we were talking about it earlier, the risk to you. Should anything go wrong, you're sending them data, you're sending them sensitive data. So, even if they are a larger company, you really need to set those proper processes in place to make sure that, their access is appropriate. Because, they might need some data for what they need to do, but are you sending them a whole bunch of extra stuff? So, if they were to get breached, then it turns out you were sending them all this extra data, and now that's a
Yep.
real horror story right there.
Yep.
Um, and even with these larger companies, they might have a SOC 2. I'm sure they do have a SOC 2. They probably have all sorts of different certifications. But you really need to look at those, not just, okay, check the box, they have a SOC 2, good to go. Does that SOC 2 even encapsulate the products that they're providing to you? Because they very well might not. So there's a lot more than just, okay, they've got this cert, good to go. You really do need to spend the time and make sure that it is covering what you use from them.
Yeah, and I wish I had a can of worms because I would open it right now. Right. That would like creepy crawly worms. There's my Halloween reference. But you you said it, you brought it up. Third party risk management companies. So that process is included in audits. And so sadly, way too often what we see, oh, I need to do this. You're right. Oh, we need to ask him for a SOC 2 report. Great, we got it. Okay, but what'd you do with it? Did you read
Mm-hmm.
it? Is it the appropriate scope? Were there any exceptions? Does it align where they said in their SOC 2, these are the pairing controls that you need to have? Did you align that? Like, did you go through that rigor? No, because what do we see a lot of times? We see, well, one, we see companies wanting to outsource third-party risk management because it's hard. It takes a lot of time and work. Yes, it does. But apart from people, supply chain is the largest risk. And
Yep.
because it's a cloud world, we're ultimately all connected. I think it was about 1 year ago today, there was a very unexpected outage that affected hospitals and airlines. And if I recall right, I think you were actually in the air when it happened. And
Yeah, yeah, I was just
yeah,
about to take off.
yeah, okay, and then there it
Mm-hmm.
went, and things went down, and good thing the plane wasn't tied to anyway, different problem. But but yeah, it's so easy to just lean on, "Hey, this is a big name, so I don't need to really worry about it." We've actually dug into those big names, and not the ones I mentioned, but other big names, like other, like, leaders in their industry. And there's a lot of compliance theater going on out there, a lot, unfortunately, and and vendors are doing it as well. And so when we really press in, which is what you're supposed to do in a third party risk management, risk assessment, that's what it is. It's not a third party check assessment. It's a third party risk assessment. And so when you really press in, like before COVID, people would literally go on site and visit. Like that's how important they understand the importance. Plus, I come out of banking, it's no nonsense in banking. And so it was serious. Like we're really digging in and doing a risk assessment, not a check the box assessment with the cheapest resource I can find. Someone straight out of college has no idea what they're doing. I'll outsource it to a third party. They have no idea what my risk posture is. So they're just doing kind of a blanket, whatever look. There's so many nuances to this, and you don't have the time to do this with all of your vendors, but the ones that are really critical to your service offering, really critical to your organization, reputationally, operationally, you got to dig in and do those risk assessments because that's what the R stands for. It's not third party check the box assessment, but we see it a lot in AI. What do you think AI is doing to it? You think it's
Oh,
making it
it's
better?
just making it easier, honestly, I think, to come up with theater type messaging about any sort of questions that come up. Um, I think, yeah, it's there's a real, and AI ties into this, that I mean, everyone's so busy. We're all busy,
Yes,
and
so
we
true.
just want to get through what we need to get through. But and so there is that inclination to just be like, okay, they have their certifications, whatever, but you aren't wasting time by really looking at their, their Q&A. Does that answer really apply to the services that you're getting from them? Does that fully make
Yeah.
sense in the context of how you're using this vendor? And again, like you said, it doesn't need to be for every vendor, but just doing that analysis to figure out which vendors are touching sensitive data, which are the most critical to you,
Yeah.
and really taking that time to dive in and think thoroughly about these answers and how they align with what you're getting from them.
Yeah, absolutely. And to add to that, to really understand what they do for you and what they do not do for you. We see that a lot as well. Well, it's a SaaS, so they do everything. Is that a true
Mm-hmm.
statement? It's not a true statement. They don't do everything for you. They do some things for you, but they don't do everything. The easiest, obvious one is they do provide access control mechanisms, but it's up to the company to solution that and to monitor that and make sure that is correct. Then, as you start to go down the spectrum away from SaaS into platform and infrastructure as a service, are they doing patching for you? Are they doing vol scanning for you? What else are they doing? They're doing it for their organization, so it's real. This is where the compliance theater, shell game. Ooh, shell game. See, it's all good. Yes, we do all that. But wait, do you do that for my stuff?
Right.
Shell game. We've been
Yeah.
part of several of those shell games, unfortunately. They're like, yeah, but we do that. But for our instance, no, that's the customer's responsibility. First time I've heard it. Wow. So that's a gap for me. And then to your point, If something goes wrong, whose fault is it? Well, I use this really great vendor over here, so sorry, customer, not my problem. No, it's your problem.
Yeah,
It's
that's
entirely
not
your
how it's
problem.
gonna work.
It's
Yeah,
not, because it's your job to make sure that if you choose to use a vendor as part of your company, that's great. A lot of, everybody does it. I don't,
sure.
it would be hard to make a company to not do that, quite
Yeah.
frankly. But it's being smart about how you are really doing that. And then solar winds, that's just too easy, low hanging fruit, because there it is right there. Solar winds was baked into so many different organizations. They were highly trusted. Oh, yeah, there's never going to be an issue with them. Well, there you go. And there was some compliance theater going on there as well, because they did have a SOC 2, but SOC 2s are scoped around a particular scope. And my understanding is what was compromised was not really in that scope. And so, yes, they have been audited. Yes, they were doing a lot of things right. But the one thing they weren't doing right, that's what gets you. I love to give this example. It's like a building with 1,000 windows and doors. 999 of them are locked. But it's that one that's not locked is the one they're going to go after. And so you've done it's not like high school where you just get to pass and we're okay. All it takes is one, and then there's the issue. So you've done 999 things right, but the one thing wrong is what they will care about, which is just the state of
Yep.
where we are. So any final thoughts on that, horror, or any questions that are relevant here?
I think the questions are gonna be best for the next one. I
Okay.
don't really have too much else to add here. I think that's pretty good.
Okay, let's do it. Here we go. This is probably one of the most, we've kind of alluded to this. This is probably one of the most horrible horrors. I had to say that very slow because it would not have come out properly had I done
Yes.
it faster. One of the most horrible horrors is this right here, the cheap audit that costs them everything. I am seeing now audits on LinkedIn for as little as $2,500. What should executives and business leaders be thinking? Should they be thinking, how dare all these audit people for all these years charging all that extra money when all it had to do was cost $2,500? Is that what they should be thinking, Tanya?
Not quite, not quite. They should be thinking, why did it get cheaper?
Yeah, ding, ding,
Maybe
ding.
there's a little bit of price variance just from the nature
Sure.
of competition. But that big of a decrease, what is being compromised in that process? And
Yeah.
how does that impact you? Because it's going to impact you.
Yeah. Yeah, very much so. And then it makes me think of, okay, well, you're married, but so we maybe need to. Okay, here we go. Your husband gets invited to this amazing dinner with all these high end people, and obviously he takes you. And you go to Walmart and buy an $8 dress. Is that what you're gonna do? You're meeting all these like heads of state and all these amazing people, this beautiful
No,
fancy place, and Tanya goes to Walmart and buys an $8 dress. Wow,
that's a
really?
horror story in
That
itself.
is a horror
That
story
scared
right
me.
there. Not smart. Yeah, because what's on the line? What's on the line for an audit? What should the leaders really be thinking? Not the, ooh, $2,500. That's all I have to pay. That's like a tenth of the cost of an actual quality audit. Ooh, what should
Right.
they be thinking? Well, $8 is a tenth of, well, it's even cheaper than that of a really
But
quality dress. Like, why do they sell the expensive dresses? Like, seriously, they're just ripping
sure.
us off. No, come on, there's a point to this thing.
Yeah, exactly. There's quality, there's your reputation. How is this going to look to other
Yeah,
people? What sort of message is this sending? If you're trying to get new business and you have this audit certification, whatever, from a cheap audit firm, how is that prospective client going to look at that?
yeah. And
They're
they're
going to
starting
put two and
to.
two together,
They're
or at
starting
least
to.
assumptions. Yeah,
Yeah, companies that are legit about their third-party risk management, not just throwing the cheapest resources they can throw at it. They are actually starting to look at who is the audit firm on these things. I remember one of our clients a few years back, they did their ISO surveillance audit, which is the year two, the interim audits, and it took 30 minutes. and it was done. Okay, that's not a reputable auditor. And I don't know what the cost was, but it was probably not very much. So again,
Right.
leaders should be thinking through this. Now, there are some legitimate ways to get costs down that if you do have, if you buy a tool, for example, and you have a significant portion on the tool and it's configured properly and it's appropriately run, so the auditor does legitimately have to do less in that they can rely upon some of the things of the tool, then yes, maybe your audit cost is legitimately lower. But when something is 1/10 the cost or less, you really have to caution thinking that through. And then Tanya, I'm going to ask you the question again. What percentage of this can be automated? 100?
No, not quite.
So
Not
not
quite.
realistic. So
No.
again, to really like think through that full end to end, and the realism of that. And so this goes back to what we were talking about. It's GRC, but there's too much emphasis on C. It should really be CRG, or it should be C with ghost R and G, because they got murdered and now they're like Beetlejuice, which
Yeah.
you know the Beetlejuice reference.
No.
Okay, we're moving on. You need to watch Beetlejuice. But yes, but they're like Beetlejuice for those of you who know what that means. And they and they you know, they're just ghosts. They're just missing. And so really heavy emphasis on the C. Obviously the C is what executives and customers see, the compliance. And so super important. But to the person who asked the question, like, how do you get them to see? You've got to start serving up the G and the R to them. Like, you have to start helping them see the bigger picture, that it's great that we're successful at compliance, but that's the end game. That's not the beginning game. And it's certainly not the full game. And so we just have to help leaders, business leaders, continually understand that the attractant of cheap and fast. I go to conferences and I see cheap and fast audits, and immediately I'm like, not interested in talking to you. And so, because this is not cheap and fast, that's kind of like, you know, addressing your health. I'm going to do it cheap and fast. Well, you're going to be worse off in the end than you were when you began. So you probably should just not do that. Like, it'd probably be worse. It'd probably be better just to do nothing, honestly. And so then there's
Exactly.
that. Yeah. And then, you know, these low quality audits are reinforcing that kind of false sense of security, which is, again, it would be better to just not do any of that, because I have been asked numerous times by executives, well, we passed our audit, so what are you talking about? Okay,
Mhm.
let's start back at the beginning, shall we?
Exactly. And you kind of end up trapping yourself in, some
Yeah.
sort of maze, one could say.
Mm.
A spooky
With things
maze.
jumping out at you, yes.
Yes. Where then, if you do realize, okay, I've been doing this cheap sort of audit, I want to mature, I want to grow, it's not just, you're not going to be doing the same audit with another audit firm. You're going to have to do work to get yourself out of that hole.
You brought up a really good point. I love this. I love that you just brought that up. Could you move to any other audit firm? Could you move to, we work with companies who, yes, it's a maturity cycle, it's a maturity path. So maybe I start with a C-level auditor now to be successful, but then my goal is to move up to a B level. Then my goal is to move up to A level. But I'm not going to sit at this D minus level and just, okay, we're all good. No, that is horror. That is truly horror. There should be this pursuit of continuously improving, of continuously moving up the scale in maturity, obviously in pace with the company and the funding and size and scope and all of those criteria. This is still very much art. It's not just black and white and how we do this, but the point is you're continually looking to get better, continually improving. And then this right here is actually not a breach story. This is just outright fraud. And some of this stuff borderlines on that, to be quite honest. It's just, outright fraud. A 30-minute surveillance audit is there's nothing right about it. Like, zero. It's not even the intent of what it's supposed to be. You can't even like plan to have a conversation in 30 minutes. That's insanity, much less go through at least a third of the controls in 30 minutes and
Right.
really make sure that things are good. And so that's just outright fraud. That's, a lack of integrity for sure. So sadly, it happens out there. It's happening a lot. And for what we do and for people that we work with, it's very important to take this stewardship very seriously and want to do the best thing, again, in the constraint of time and resources. Those are always constraints.
Yes,
Okay, any
we
questions?
do have a
Ooh,
question.
okay.
So, what has worked for you when shifting culture from check the box to own
Yep.
the risk?
Yeah, that's a great question. Oh, sorry. You want to jump in?
Go for it.
Okay. Well, the first thing that comes to mind is ownership. You have to we see a lot of times the people responsible for this own everything. And so they take the burden of everything. And the reality is risks and controls are owned across the organization. They're not owned by the GRC folks. We are responsible to build, implement, and run them, oversee them, hold people accountable, all of that. But we don't own the risks. We don't own the activities. So that should get pushed out across the organization. That's so critically important because when you push them out to people and you start to hold them accountable, but you work in coaching and patience to help them understand, to make it as easy as possible for them. You don't bully them, you don't talk disrespectfully to them. You work with them in patience and coaching to help them understand that, hey, you're responsible for this. I'm here to help you, but I'm pushing this out. Whenever we see companies running all this stuff in Excel or worse, which there is worse, but Excel, we'll just leave it at that. Um, it then the ownership stays within the team, and then that's very dangerous because these people don't understand what they're supposed to be doing. And so back to the question, I think ownership, while it's painful and it's difficult and it can take a lot of effort, it's kind of like raising children. Do I just want to go clean the room for them because it'll be done in 20 minutes and it'll be done right?
Exactly.
Or do I want the pain of weeks of angst and back and forth and teaching them, which is going to take me 10 times longer? But guess what? I'm going to have a child who understands cleanliness, a child who knows how to do it the right way, a child who's trained, and their future spouse is going to be very appreciative that I took that time to teach them that, because they're going to be a much tidier person, ideally, in their later lives, you know. But most people are not cranky on purpose. Some are. Most people, they just don't know what they don't know. They're busy, they're overwhelmed, they got a lot on their plate. And I don't ask them to start doing stupid stuff like fill out this 12 tab Excel spreadsheet that's going to wear you out. And then when you make one mistake, I'm going to yell at you. Like, don't do that. That's not good people change management. You want to make it very easy for them. So this is where we're a huge proponent of the GRC tools, because that allows you really to push out that ownership across the organization. Now, my role is able to shift to be more metrics, dashboards, monitoring, failures, improvements. I'm able to actually do the things I'm supposed to be doing, while control owner, risk owner, you do what you're supposed to be doing. What would you add, Tanya?
No, I think that's spot on. It's really tempting when you know how busy, how cranky owners can be
They
to
can
just
be.
be like, I'll just take the burden upon myself. I probably have more time than them. But that's not how you're going to get everyone to understand the real importance of it all and how they play into the risk picture.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it is really critical to spend that time, as uncomfortable as it may be.
Yeah, it really is. It's super important that we put the ownership where it belongs, because that's what starts to really move. When you hold, years ago, I was told by a therapist for raising children that if you don't allow them to feel the pain, they're not going to change. And that
Yeah,
is just the harsh reality of life. And so we have to let them feel the pain of what they own and what they need to be doing. We're still going to do it with grace and with dignity and respect, but we're going to do that so they start to feel the pain and they start to see the value of it. And then they will more naturally fall into the fold. And then the ones who don't, well, then that's a management issue. And then you address those
sure.
separately. No big deal. So really, really good dialogue. Good question. Another one or?
We do have another one if we
Okay.
have time.
Sure.
How do you start the conversation when executives only ask, "Are we compliant?"
Yeah, that's again, great question. I think it goes back to you present the full picture to them. They may be interested in compliance. They may see that as the end game, but this really does become coaching and education to help them understand the bigger picture. And so metrics go a long way with that because if you're giving a dashboard and metrics and able to articulate something different than just we've passed the audit, then they have another lens to look at. But this also reminds me of one company we worked with and very large company, very siloed. And so I think it was vulnerabilities. I think it was vulnerabilities. There was like 3 different stories to executives of vulnerabilities. Well, this is what it
Mhm.
is. Well, no, that's wrong. It's this. No, no, that's wrong. It's this. So quite frankly, they were confused, the executives. They didn't know what was what. And one of them was horribly inflated because it had not really been configured and tuned. And then one was very whatever the opposite of inflated. It was
Deflated.
very deflated. It was very minimized because it was on a very narrow scope. And then there was another flavor in the middle. And so there was the confusion. And so when leaders of companies are confused, because again, you got to realize they've got like things flying at them all day, every day. Make this decision, deal with this thing,
Mhm.
deal with that, move this. Oh, by the way, keep the business going. All these different things going on at all the time. And then when we confuse them with things that they don't understand, they just move on. I heard somebody told me this years ago. Confused people always end in no because they don't know what to do. So they're just confused. They move on. It's just no, go, bye. And so that's our job is to help them to understand. And then I'll also say this, the organization owns the risk. And so we have to tell them that. We have to make them understand that. And then if they choose to ignore it, that's on them. But what's on us is to clearly make that known. If an organization has a million vulnerabilities and the leadership clearly understands that and they choose not to invest to take care of that, then that risk is on them. But if we send them mixed signals with different numbers and we're all confused and we're not giving them clear guidance to take action on, then that's on us. And so really a lot of this does come back to people change management and and communication, which again, you just cannot automate this stuff is the harsh reality. Great question. Anything you would like to add?
No, I think that's great. Spot on.
Okay. I think this is going to be our last one. Let's look at this one here. Let's just briefly talk about this. We've kind of talked about this already. So this
Yeah.
is the horror of they passed the audit and then disappeared and then did nothing. Have we seen examples of this?
Yeah, just a few. Just a
Just a
few.
few.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, we're audit, so we're good. CMMC is
exactly.
changing the game on this because, well, actually, Sarbanes-Oxley changed the game on this because now quarterly you have to sign that you can go to jail over if these controls are not operating or anything that's changed.
Mm.
So Sarbanes-Oxley intentionally started to move in that direction, but sadly, not really a part of a lot of the audits. And so it kind of gets done, it kind of doesn't get done. But CMMC, that's one ISO at least has the internal audit requirement every year. So
Yeah.
there's at least like, hey, you need to be looking at these things at least once a year. So that's something.
Mhm.
It's not ideal, but it's something. And then CMMC has that similar intent that you can't just pass this thing. That just starts the journey. That doesn't end anything. That you're in this thing now. You've done it now. And so, and again,
Right.
there's penalties associated with CMMC. So they're trying to make this more real. So what else have you seen?
Yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of, like it says in what summons it. So we passed once, pat yourself on the back and that's it. We're
Yep.
good. It's like you clear the haunted house. It's good. It's all safe. And then you go out the front door and you leave it wide open.
Yeah.
And then you return and you have to do it all again.
Yep.
Instead of just putting the controls, the protections in place to make sure that the work that you've already done continues, monitoring it, assigning out ownership so people know what they're responsible for, who's doing the monitoring of what, and how it relates to their work.
Yeah. Super important. Yeah, this is that's why it doesn't work when you give it to the IT guy or the security person to like, hey, you can just do this too, right? That's why it doesn't work because this is something that's operating every day and you're looking for failures. You're making sure things are going the way that you should be doing it. That's why the teams that run these that they can't be control and risk owners too. That has to get
Sure.
pushed out across the organization so that they can effectively spend their time monitoring and staying on top of it. And then there's this little thing called continuous improvement. That is intentionally in every framework. That none of this stuff is set it and forget it, which is exactly what this is. That's not the intention of any of this to just set it and forget it. And how many times, Tanya, do we hear, oh no, the auditors are coming next month. This is awful.
Right.
Should it be awful that the auditors are coming next month?
No, no, and I was just
No.
thinking, the more often you check on something, the less scary it is. Okay, now I've
Yeah,
taken
good
a week
point.
to check on something. I'm a little scared to check on it. I wait a
Yeah.
month, I'm even more scared. So
Yep.
then you leave it till audit, and yeah, it's terrifying all of a sudden.
It
But if you
is.
take that just little chunk of time daily or however often it's supposed to be to make sure that you're on track, you're doing the right stuff, and that if there is anything that went wrong, you can catch it quickly as opposed
Yep.
to months down the road, you're gonna feel better. You're gonna be less scared, less spooky.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, audit is not the bar. I mean, I cannot say that enough times. There is great value in compliance in building a robust cyber program. Great value in compliance. We should not be making these things up just what we think they should be. We should be doing risk assessments, leveraging what we identify there, leveraging compliance to build a robust, appropriate security program. And then we should stay on top of it. Audit is like, oh yeah, this point in time check that happens over here. So
Mm-hmm.
while it's important and while it's tied to revenue, that's where you get this whole notion of compliance is not security. Well, intentionally they are the same thing, but a point in time audit is not protection. That is a
Right.
point in time check. That's like taking a whole class and then you get to the end of the class and say, okay, can you pass the test? Yes, today, point in time, I can pass the test. But can you go back to your high school classes and pass the test today? No, we've moved on. Haven't looked at that
Right.
stuff, thought about that stuff, and that's unfortunately a lot of the way this stuff gets run. Okay, so we're almost at time. So here's the real horror. This is what should make you shudder and shake in your bones. People. It requires people to stay on top of this stuff. It requires people to participate, people to do what they need to do. And people are naturally difficult. Most of the breaches are ultimately tied to people failures, but then that would also be process failures as well. Sometimes it's somebody just not doing what they should be doing or on purpose doing something they shouldn't be doing. But a lot of times it's the process breakdown as well. So that's the real horror of this. And so again, that's where this whole notion of buy these tools and buy this and you'll pass this audit and it's all good. You've totally ignored the real horror. It's like I took the TV that the poltergeist came through, I rolled it outside and I'm good to go now. No, you still have it in your house. That's the problem. You still have
Yeah.
the issue. And so being very realistic about what the issue is. What would you add? What if you can just leave one thing with the audience, what's the most important thing you would leave them with?
Yeah, I think it really is just understanding the full picture of how it all is interrelated, understanding just a clear risk picture. And I think just all of these relate to the importance of a true risk assessment
Yeah,
and really keeping metrics. And yeah, those are my main things. What would you
that's
say?
yeah, I would just speak against the whole checkbox thing. That really is
Yeah.
horror. We see a lot of it, unfortunately. Oh, well, I can do it for 10 cents over here, but it means nothing. So it's 10 cents wasted because it has no value. And so
Mm-hmm.
we see that and it's human nature. It's human nature to just take the easy path, be lazy. I don't have to work that hard. Like, and it's
Exactly.
cheap. And so why wouldn't I do this? And it's just an audit. So who really cares? but it's really about being a good steward of our organizations and a good steward of protecting, and customers expect that we're not checking boxes. When they send us
Right.
questionnaires, they're not expect, and when they ask for audits, they're not expecting that, we check box this thing and we took the easy path. They're expecting that we're actually prioritizing protection, and that's what's super important in this. So at Hotman Group, we will do a complimentary GRC health check, give you our thoughts, and walk through that with you. So please reach out to schedule that. And then we do have a podcast, because all of this is as much art as it is science. So definitely subscribe to the podcast. Tanya, thank you so much for your time today and all of your
Thank
insight. Greatly
you.
appreciate that. Don't be too scared. Sleep with the lights on tonight. I really appreciate your time, and thank you so much, each and all of you, for listening. Please connect, send
Thank
us your
you.
questions, and happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.